Welcome back, Reindeer fans and hockey fans. Going to be doing something quite a bit different here today. I'm sure by now, basically everyone has heard the news of what happened last week, the tragedy involving Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. And today's episode is going to be quite a bit different. Going to go ahead and do a tribute show for both Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. And for anybody that, at this point, like I said, I think pretty much everybody knows the news. But for a brief recap here, Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau were tragically killed by an alleged drunk driver last Thursday. They were in New Jersey, and they were there. It was going to be their sister's wedding the following day. And, I mean, just saying all this out loud just it makes you realize, and it hits you all over again, just what a tragedy this was, how sad it was, and tragically how completely avoidable this all was. It really just comes down to these selfish decisions made by a single individual. Again, just for a recap here of everything that happened, Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, night before their sister's wedding, they go out for a bike ride, and you've got a drunk driver on the road, and apparently this individual was driving recklessly, was trying to get around some slower-moving cars, hit both of the Gaudreau brothers, and both of them, unfortunately, were killed in the accident. And I wanted to go ahead and read the statements by the two teams that Johnny Gaudreau played for in the NHL. We'll start with the Blue Jackets, and then we'll also read a statement from the Calgary Flames. And this is how I found out about it. Thursday night, apparently news had made its way onto the internet in one way or another that, rumor was going around that Johnny Gaudreau had been killed. And then, obviously the next day, the news is released by the teams. And the first thing that I saw, because you're hoping it's a hoax, and you're hoping, now anybody that would spread a rumor like that somebody's dead when they're not really, I mean, I don't know what's going through somebody like that's head, but it still beats the alternative, which is, of course, the reality that this actually did happen, that this tragedy, this unthinkable tragedy has actually occurred. But this is what the Blue Jackets said, in their release, talking about Johnny Gaudreau the following day. The Columbus Blue Jackets are shocked and devastated by this unimaginable tragedy. Johnny was not only a great hockey player, but more significantly, a loving husband, father, son, brother, and friend. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to his wife, Meredith, his children, Noah and Johnny, his parents, their family, and friends on the sudden loss of Johnny and Matthew. Johnny played the game with great joy, which was felt by everyone that saw him on the ice. He brought a genuine love for hockey with him everywhere he played, from Boston College to the Calgary Flames to Team USA to the Blue Jackets. He thrilled fans in a way only Johnny Hockey could. The impact he had on our organization and our sport was profound, but pales in comparison to the indelible impression he made on everyone who knew him. Johnny embraced our community when he arrived 2 years ago, and Columbus welcomed him with open arms. We will miss him terribly and do everything that we can to support his family and each other through this tragedy. At this time, we ask for prayers for the Gaudreau family and that their privacy be respected as they grieve. And just heavy stuff, a lot to unpack there. But the general consensus that I'm getting, and I never met Johnny Gaudreau, anybody out there who was fortunate enough to do so, please leave your stories in the comments section. You can email them to me. Maybe in the future, we'll read a couple of those comments. But by all accounts, just a wonderful human being, him and his brother. I don't want to just make this, Johnny only. Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, both very humble. Always remember where they came from. Just two really good guys and two very friendly guys, and two players and human beings that were very, very down to earth. And I'll go ahead and now read the statement that was released by the Calgary Flames as well. It's with great sadness we mourn the tragic deaths of our friend Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew Gaudreau. Our hearts are broken by this devastating loss. Johnny was and always will be a member of the Flames family and loved by all of Calgary. And they posted a great picture here of Johnny Gaudreau on the ice. It's clearly after a game is over. And looking at the scoreboard here, which you can see in the background, some of you may have seen this picture already. 3-2 in overtime, Flames being the Dallas Stars. I'm like 99% sure that this picture has to be from the playoff game in Game 7. Stars and Flames in Calgary went into overtime, and Johnny Gaudreau scored just a ridiculous goal to give the Flames the win and advance them into the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And he's holding his stick into the air, and a bunch of Flames fans in the background going crazy, as one does, when their team wins a Game 7 overtime thriller. But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to make any sense out of any of this. I feel certainly for the fans, hockey fans of him, but first and foremost, more than anything else, I certainly feel for his family. His immediate family immediately comes to mind. His wife Meredith and his kids Noah and Johnny. And this story just has. I mean, it's so tremendously sad, but it just has endless layers of sadness to it. You find out. I mean, again, I didn't see on Thursday night the rumors beginning to circulate that Johnny Gaudreau had been killed. I saw them the next morning. At the time, nothing had been confirmed yet, and then not too much later in the morning, it was indeed confirmed. And I mean, that's what your mind goes to, is the family. But you find out that Johnny Gaudreau has been killed. Then you find out that his brother was with him and that he passed away as well. Then you find out that it was done by a drunken driver, meaning this entire thing was the sole fault of one just incredibly selfish, low-life waste of oxygen. So that gets your blood boiling. Now you're angry on top of being sad, and not just me. I mean, this is probably a lot of the emotions that a lot of people are going through. And then you find out that, it's something that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that Johnny and Matthew, they were there to attend the wedding of their sister. She was going to get married the next day. So something that's supposed to be joyous and fun and just awesome turns into, again, just a horrible, unthinkable, unspeakable tragedy. And obviously my heart goes out to everybody involved. And then you find out, on top of everything else, that Matthew Gaudreau, his wife Madeline, is pregnant with their son Trip. And so he was an expectant father, and doesn't get to see his son get born. It's just, you say all that stuff out loud, and it's absolutely unreal. It's so sad. In just a second, we're going to keep going here, talk about, Johnny Gaudreau. I want to talk a little bit about his legacy and everything. I would love to share, more personal stories about him. And we see, you look at the internet right now, Twitter or anywhere else, there's a lot of, family members, current teammates, former teammates of Johnny Gaudreau that are sharing a lot of those stories right now. And I'll share a few of those that have been shared by others a little bit later in today's episode. But I do want to talk a little bit about the hockey side of things and just the impact that he made and what I think will be his greatest legacy. And obviously none of that, look, hockey doesn't matter. It's a loss of life. But hockey was a big part of who he is, and it's a big reason why a lot of us know who he is. So we will talk about that side of his life in just a minute. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. There are Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You also have seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And there's also the lowest price guarantee. Lowest price or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. All right, so we'll keep everything going here on this very special tribute episode for Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau. You talk about, what he did on the ice. And look, again, I said this a minute ago, but I want to make this clear. Hockey doesn't matter at all right now because, again, there's tragic loss of life here. And I think everybody that knew Johnny Gaudreau best would probably tell you that, yeah, awesome hockey player and obviously was having a phenomenal career for himself, but that's only a part of who he was. But as far as, the hockey aspect of everything here, again, by all accounts, an even better human being than he was a hockey player. I want to make sure that I mention that. To me, we could talk about stats, but that's not really what this is about here. I think Gaudreau and his legacy as a hockey player will be, he did something very special for two entirely different groups of hockey players. And I will get to that in just a second. But I will also say that just as a fan of hockey, I found him to be one of the most exciting players around the NHL. The playoffs start every year. And obviously, most people watching this are probably going to be Ranger fans. And we're obviously going to, hone in on everything that the Rangers are doing. But the Rangers don't play every night. And when you have, all these other series going on, especially in the first round, 8 different series to pick from, and you can decide which series you want to watch. And I would watch the Flames back when Gaudreau was on the Flames. basically because of him. You might gravitate to this playoff series or that playoff series, or there's an interesting storyline here. Man, this series has been good. All these games are going to overtime, whatever it might be. But Johnny Gaudreau was that exciting of a hockey player. This guy was an absolute magician when he had the puck on his stick, just incredibly talented and just an incredibly fun player to watch. So I would find myself often, when the Flames were in the playoffs, Gaudreau, I would end up watching that team about as often as, just about any other team other than the Rangers, obviously. But as far as, the hockey perspective, we're not going to get into stats or anything like that. That's kind of beside the point right now. I think, though, and I mentioned this just a second ago, his legacy to me, Johnny Gaudreau, it comes down to what he's done for two different types of hockey players. First of all, undersized hockey players. And secondly, players that were drafted, fairly late in the NHL draft. As far as undersized players go, we'll start there. He stood all of 5'9", weighed all of 165 pounds. One of the smaller players in the NHL, and none of that mattered because he was just that talented and that skilled and that driven to go out there and make it happen. And I think, players that if they're turning pro now, they're just getting underway in their professional career. There could be younger players, guys in college, guys in high school. We could have some kids listening to this. They're just getting started in their NHL career. Look, being big and strong, that will always, play well in hockey. But Johnny Gaudreau and players like Johnny Gaudreau, I think, have shown that very clearly that is not a prerequisite. You can make it in the NHL, despite not being the biggest guy on the ice, despite not being a giant out there. Again, 5'9", 165 pounds, and that didn't stop him from going out there and dominating this league, posting a 100-point season, making, I believe, it's in my notes somewhere here. Want to look at it later, but I want to say like 7 All-Star games for Johnny Gaudreau. Just a tremendously fun and talented player. And he's not the only one, but he's one of the more, I think, recent examples. If there's like some young fans out there getting into hockey, this is a guy that you gravitate toward. If you're not necessarily the biggest player on your team, in your league, at any level, whatever it might be, this is your guy right here. Johnny Gaudreau going out there and skating circles around these giants, and at times just making them look silly. I mean, like I said, I think one of the most exciting things about Gaudreau, phenomenal all-around player, but what he could do when the puck was on his stick. You watch his highlights. Defenders, good defensemen around this league, as he's approaching them, they don't know what to do. You see them kind of tense up and they're not really sure, do I go after him? Do I sit back? Is he going to pass? Is he going to shoot? There's a lot of indecisiveness when you watch Johnny Gaudreau highlights from opposing players, even some really good defensemen. So there's that. And the second group, players that get drafted late when it comes to the NHL. Or if you want to relate that to some younger players, maybe some players that get drafted late, in whatever league it might be, whatever rec league, players that, maybe as you don't get a prominent role on your high school team when you're younger, and then you get better as you go on. Players that aren't initially thought of, super highly in one way or another. But you look at Johnny Gaudreau, again, another shining example of that. And this might have something to do with his size or lack thereof as far as why he went so late in the draft. I don't know. I don't know that for sure. But he was taken by the Flames in the 4th round of the 2011 NHL draft. He went number 104 overall. And again, Johnny Gaudreau, not the first example of somebody to eclipse his draft status. Probably won't be the last either, but I think he's one of those players that, is kind of the poster person of that, somebody getting drafted late and obviously beating the odds, beating his lack of size, and far, far surpassing what clearly any NHL team thought he would do, because every team in the NHL passed on him in that draft at least 3 times, if not 4 times. And then Calgary eventually takes him in the 4th round. And you talk about, a mid-round pick paying dividends. But, he got his opportunity, made the most of it, and became one of the best players and certainly one of the most exciting players in the NHL. So that, to me, above any stat or even any moment that Johnny Gaudreau had, that to me is his legacy, the inspiration that he very likely gives to, like I said, smaller hockey players at any level, at any age, whatever it might be, and guys that get drafted, late. If you're not in the first 3 rounds, it's kind of, becomes kind of crap shoot like, once you get into some of the later rounds there. But the Flames saw something they liked in Gaudreau, and like I said, he paid it back in a big way. As far as his biggest moment on the ice, I touched on this a little bit briefly earlier in today's episode, but it's got to be Game 7. A couple of years ago in 2022, his overtime winner. Flames are hosting the Stars. Game 7. Game is tied 2-2. It's in overtime, and I'm going to break down this play in great detail here because we're paying tribute to Johnny Gaudreau, certainly the person, also the hockey player. But, I mean, everything that made him an awesome player was on full display here. So, overtime, Game 7, Flame Stars tied 2-2. Stage is set. The puck comes to Johnny Gaudreau behind the Dallas net. He's kind of like on the edge of the trapezoid there. And you got Jamie Benn kind of bearing down on him. Gaudreau makes a short backhand pass to his left toward the corner to Matthew Tkachuk, who was still on the Flames at the time as well. Tkachuk is under pressure, so he very quickly gets the puck back to Gaudreau. Now, Gaudreau by this point has moved to the opposite side of, behind the net. He's on the other side, kind of like where the trapezoid ends there. And he, at this point, brings it in front of the net. He's stick handling. And 2 or 3 defenders on Dallas basically look paralyzed. And this goes back to what I was talking about before, just how, silly, frankly, he could make opposing players look at time. But they don't know what to do. They don't know how to approach him. They don't know what to do in this situation here. And that's a credit to just how talented Gaudreau is. One of the defenders reaches for the puck. Gaudreau instead makes a short pass into the right circle to Lindholm. Lindholm takes a shot. The save is made. Gaudreau is all over the rebound, just pounces. It's in the left circle there. And as soon as he gets to the puck, he throws it toward the net, just a perfectly placed shot. He scores top shelf, having those instincts to get to the loose puck and then to immediately shoot the puck because the goalie, I believe it was Ottinger, he had to come up in his crease to make the save against Lindholm. And then I think Gaudreau probably realized that if I can get this shot off quickly, it's possible he won't be back to his post yet. And that's exactly what happened. And Gaudreau scores. But, I mean, everything here. The skating, the stick handling, the passing, the shot, obviously, the high hockey IQ. It was all on full display for Johnny Gaudreau here. And, again, none of this matters at all in comparison to, again, the tragic and just senseless loss of life that obviously occurred here. But that's a play for the ages. That play will be replayed as one of the greatest moments in hockey history. Any Game 7 overtime winner is already in that territory because it is such a special and such a unique moment when it does happen. But Johnny Gaudreau, I mean, that's going to be every highlight, every tribute video that's ever given to Johnny Gaudreau that includes his hockey career. That's going to be front and center. You know that for sure. I also found it really interesting, and this is getting back a little bit more toward the human perspective of this whole thing here. Johnny Gaudreau's decision to sign with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Because a lot of people, even us Locked On hosts, we're in a big group chat together and everybody's saying, Johnny's going to come over here. Johnny wants to play here. Johnny wants to do this. Johnny wants to do that. And I think a lot of us, and not just the Locked On hosts, but just hockey fans in general, were surprised when he went to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But the one thing I said right at the time was, listen, he's got every right to do whatever he wants. He's got his reasons. And it does sound like for the most part, I don't know if, Johnny ever outright said this, but the prevailing belief at that time was it was a very family-driven decision. Him and his family had been there. They really liked the area. They thought it would be great. And that's what they did. And that's who, he signed with. A member of the Columbus Blue Jackets for the last 2 years. And the other thing that I threw out there, and I don't know if Johnny ever really said this without, scouring every interview that he's ever done, but my theory there too was maybe he's embracing this challenge of trying to put the Columbus Blue Jackets on the map a little bit because it's a team that ever since it's come into existence doesn't really have a ton of history. They've made the playoffs a couple of times and they had that big sweep of the Lightning year that the Lightning were the best regular season team in NHL history. They swept them in the first round. But other than that, there's not a ton of history with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and maybe Johnny was embracing the idea of trying to write some history for the Blue Jackets, some good history. And maybe, also be a mentor because the Blue Jackets still have a ridiculously young team. So that seemed like a role that, perhaps Johnny Gaudreau was embracing a little bit. I always just found that, from the human perspective, very interesting that he chose to go with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But we're going to keep everything going in just a second here. Continue paying our respects to Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. I want to talk about a couple of players and people that were affected by Johnny Gaudreau, and also a story toward the end of today's episode that I think tells a lot about exactly who Johnny Gaudreau was. And we will get to all of that in just a second. All right, we are back here on Locked On New York Rangers, doing a very special tribute episode here today for Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau. And one of the names that I think came to my mind first, and probably a lot of you as well, former New York Ranger Kevin Hayes. My understanding is that Kevin Hayes and Johnny Gaudreau were very, very close, very good friends. Kevin Hayes put up a post that said, "Love you, John. Say hello to Bo's dad for me." And you really got to, you got to feel for everybody. First and foremost, again, the family, his immediate family, his wife and his 2 kids, all of his extended family, certainly his sister, his parents, everybody that was affected by this, impacted by this in any way. But as far as like NHL players are concerned, Kevin Hayes is certainly somebody whose name jumps out quite a bit because he's been through it the last few years, has Kevin Hayes. And obviously a former New York Ranger, a member of that team that made it to the Stanley Cup final in 2014. But just a couple of years ago, lost his brother Jimmy Hayes, and now his very good friend Johnny Gaudreau. It's been a really tough stretch for Kevin Hayes, and obviously this offseason traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I definitely want to give a shout out to Pat and Hunter from Locked On Penguins. I did see a clip from one of their more recent episodes because they did a tribute to Johnny Gaudreau as well. And they were talking about Kevin Hayes, and I think it was Pat who said this. He had a great idea here. When Kevin Hayes takes the ice on opening night, because they do the player introductions. Every team does this. We know that. When that happens, there should be like a deafening ovation for Kevin Hayes because, like I said, he's really gone through a lot recently. I think what Patrick said was that the fans should react as if it's Sidney Crosby coming onto the ice and just to let him know we've got your back and everything's going to be okay and we're here for you. Kevin Hayes, like I said, it's been a tough couple of years for him, losing his brother and now his good friend, Johnny Gaudreau. You've also got Matthew Tkachuk. The 2 of them obviously played together in Calgary, and they both moved on in the last couple of years here. But Matthew Tkachuk, it sounds like the 2 of them were close. He posted on Twitter, "Absolutely devastated. I will miss that smile. R.I.P. Hockey." Obviously, referring to him by his nickname, Johnny Hockey. And then he said, "Love you, bro." There was also, and this will tug at your heartstrings no matter who you are. There was a picture of Johnny Gaudreau as a member of the Blue Jackets. He was on the ice. Before a game. You've seen this before too, right? A lot of players, they'll be on the ice and a lot of them have young kids and their wife or whoever it might be will bring over the kid to the glass and they'll hold them up. And just a great picture of, Johnny's wife holding up his daughter and Gaudreau. You can't see their faces, but you can see Johnny's face and you can see, just smiling from ear to ear and waving to his daughter there. It's the kind of stuff that it just rips your heart out. I found this interesting too. There was a story shared by a reporter. His name is Matt Larkin on Twitter. He basically told a story. I'm not going to read the Twitter, the tweet here word for word, but he basically told a story of the 2 of them were at an event together and he was going to interview Johnny Gaudreau. And it was very, very loud to the point that, I don't know what event this was exactly, but it was so loud that the 2 of them couldn't even hear each other talk. And how are we going to do this? Where are we going to do this? The reporter basically found what was essentially a broom closet, like a janitorial closet. And the 2 of them went in there and did the interview in a janitor's closet. And we don't have to name names here. Though, there are plenty of professional athletes that would not have done that. They would have said they would have thought that it's beneath them. I'm not doing an interview in the closet. Who are you? I'm such and such, and you're just so and so. Apparently, Johnny Gaudreau never batted, and I just went into the broom closet and did the interview there and was totally cool with this. So, again, just showing his down-to-earth side, I would say. You've also got Johnny's wife, Meredith. She's made a couple of posts on Instagram. Since this tragedy happened, this is what she said. "Thank you for the best years of my life. Despite losing you, I am still the luckiest girl in the world to have been yours. I love you so, so much. You were perfect. Some days it felt too good to be true. I love every single thing about you. You are my forever, and I can't wait to be with you again. I love you so much forever and ever." And there were a whole bunch of pictures of the 2 of them together. He's got 2 kids, the 4 of them together, with his children, doing a whole host of different activities, birthdays. There was a picture of Johnny, with the birthday cake, I think maybe of one of his kids. His wife then also posted a second, post on Instagram. "The absolute best dad in the world, so caring and loving, the best partner to go through parenthood with. John never missed a single appointment, was the best at putting the baby to sleep, and the apple of Noah's eye. I love how much she looks like him. We are going to make you proud. We love you so, so, so much, Daddy." And just heart-wrenching stuff. It's hard to get through that. It's hard for me even now just to read all that without my voice shaking. And I also want to give some condolences to my fellow Locked On hosts. I got to give a special heartfelt message to both Jess Belmosto and Jay Forrester. They are the hosts of Locked On Flames and Locked On Blue Jackets, respectively. I'm sure some of you listen and watch some of their shows as well, and we've done a couple of crossovers with each of them in the past. They both do an outstanding job with their show. But I can't imagine what they're going through. And my understanding is that neither one of them, knew Johnny personally or anything like that. But this guy was a star player for, I believe it was 9 seasons with the Flames and the last 2 seasons with the Blue Jackets. And we all know as Ranger fans, or if you're a fan of a different team and you just happen to be watching this podcast, you do make a connection with these players. If this had happened to a player on the Rangers, current or even past, I mean, I'd be absolutely crushed by that. So I'm sure the two of them are going through this right now. I also know that each of them have released a couple of tribute videos, a couple of tribute episodes for Johnny Gaudreau. And as soon as I'm done recording here, that's my next move. I'm going to go ahead and probably watch because I'm on my laptop here. I'll watch their latest episodes, their Johnny Gaudreau tribute episodes. I get the feeling it's must-see stuff. They both do an awesome job with their show in any circumstances, but the two of them, I'm sure, will do a great job paying tribute to Johnny Gaudreau and just saying what he meant to both of those fan bases. One more thing that I want to mention here before we call it a day. This is something that will tell you, who Johnny Gaudreau was, because we've talked about, we've talked a little bit about who he was as a person. Obviously, there's some family stuff there and obviously what he did on the ice. But I think, ending on who he was as a person, Johnny Gaudreau, this was just last season. So he's in Columbus now, obviously. He was teammates with Patrick Laine at the time. And Laine missed some time with Columbus. He was sitting out to focus on his mental health, right? Johnny Gaudreau, he said during the break, I assume he's talking about the All-Star break, that he was going to pick up Patrick Laine's commitment to donate $1,000 per point for the rest of the season to promote men's mental health awareness and support in Columbus. So the fact that, he has his teammates back like that and he's going to give away $1,000 for every point that he scores to this charity, just a wonderful, very selfless thing to do. And I mean, look, he is a professional athlete, but that's very generous. And Johnny Gaudreau's a heck of a player. So, he's going to have a lot of points. And for him to do that, to make that kind of a pledge in support of his teammate and in support of mental health, just a wonderful thing. And look, I could go on and on. We could do probably an entire week's worth of episodes on Johnny Gaudreau, and there'd be plenty to talk about. A lot of other people were on social media sending out their condolences and sharing their stories about Johnny Gaudreau. And I highly encourage everybody watching or listening to this to go, seek those out, because it'll give you an idea of, who he was behind or beyond just being a tremendously talented hockey player. And that was part of who he was, but very clearly not all of who he was. So I guess we can call it there. It's hard to know exactly how to conclude an episode quite like this, but I'll just say, all my best, obviously, to the Gaudreau family and anybody that's going through it right now and suffering from this loss, the loss of both Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau. Again, still doesn't even feel real. It's almost a week later at this point, and just one of those things that's so surreal when you find out about it. And again, my heartfelt condolences to all the Gaudreau family and anybody who is going through a tough time right now as a result of what happened here. So yeah, figure we can pretty much call it there for today. Obviously, watch each other's backs out there. Stay safe, and we will see you guys next time.